Search for Nancy Guthrie. We do know 3 people were detained.
The house didn't look like a crime scene. That was the first thing agents noticed when they stepped through the front door. No shattered glass. No overturned furniture. No desperate scratches along the walls. The air inside Nancy Guthrie's home felt undisturbed, almost protective of its silence. A lamp glowed softly in the corner of the living room. A throw blanket was folded neatly over the couch. The kitchen counters were wiped clean as if the night before had ended in ordinary peace. And yet, within hours of sunrise, Nancy was gone. When the FBI returned to that house for a second time, they didn't arrive with flashing lights or dramatic urgency. They arrived quietly, purposefully. The kind of quiet that signals something has shifted beneath the surface. They weren't looking for chaos. They were looking for what shouldn't have been there, or what should have been. Because sometimes the most disturbing discovery isn't blood on the floor. It's the absence of disruption where disruption should exist. Nancy Guthrie was not reckless. She wasn't impulsive. Friends described her as cautious, structured, deeply rooted in routine. She valued predictability. Family dinners. Familiar voices. Evenings that ended exactly the same way most evenings did, peacefully. The night she disappeared followed that pattern. She laughed at dinner. She engaged in conversation. There were no raised voices, no tension hanging in the air. She was driven home just before 10 p.m., confirmed by law enforcement. The identity of the driver was never publicly emphasized, a small detail that quietly lingered. Inside her home, everything aligned with normalcy. Her shoes were placed where she usually left them. Her phone had been charging. There were no signs she packed a bag. No evidence she prepared to leave. No frantic calls made in the dark. By morning, she had vanished. That time frame, the narrow window between safety and disappearance, is what first unsettled investigators. People rarely dissolve into thin air without noise. There are usually fragments left behind, signs of resistance, forced entry, broken locks. Nancy's house offered none of that, which meant one of two things. Either she left willingly, or whoever entered that house was not perceived as a threat. When the FBI stepped in, it signaled something subtle but serious. Federal agencies do not insert themselves into every missing person case. Their involvement suggests layers, communication crossing boundaries, digital signals, organized behavior rather than random chaos. The first search of Nancy's home followed protocol. Photographs, measurements, documentation. Every object cataloged. Every room processed in calm sequence. Then something unusual happened. They came back. Crime scenes are not revisited lightly. A return means perspective has changed. A new piece of data has altered the lens. Something once dismissed as ordinary now carries weight. The second visit wasn't dramatic. There were no press briefings, no urgent warnings. But investigators spent time inside that house again, focusing not on obvious clues but on patterns. Patterns of movement. Patterns of technology. Patterns of absence. Modern investigations do not rely solely on fingerprints and footprints. They reconstruct behavior. They trace digital timelines with precision most people underestimate. Nancy's phone logs were examined. The final moments of activity mapped. When was it last unlocked? Were messages opened but not answered? Did location tracking cease abruptly, or gradually? Her home router told its own quiet story. Internet logs document devices connecting and disconnecting. They record when something new joins the network. They record when something disappears. Smart home systems, even those that seem harmless, create behavioral signatures. Door sensors, thermostats, silent background data that tracks the rhythm of daily life. Investigators weren't looking for something explosive. They were looking for interruption. And inside Nancy's home, they found something far more unsettling than a broken window. They found continuity. Lights turned off at expected times. Devices logged routine behavior. No panic searches. No frantic typing. No late-night emergency calls. It was as if the night had closed gently, and then simply stopped. But one detail refused to settle. The timeline. The moment between her last known activity and complete digital silence was too clean. Too deliberate. There was no erratic pattern leading up to it. No escalation. Which raised a chilling question. If Nancy left under duress, why did her digital footprint remain so composed? And if she left willingly, why did she leave everything that defined her routine behind? Investigators often say a home speaks. Nancy's home whispered. It whispered that there was no struggle. It whispered that whoever was involved understood the layout, the habits, the predictability of her life. It whispered familiarity. As weeks passed, public updates slowed, then nearly stopped. Silence from authorities frustrated observers. But silence in cases like this is rarely accidental. It means theory is solidifying. When information dries up, it's often because investigators have narrowed their lens. Broad speculation gives way to specific focus. Each word spoken publicly could jeopardize what they are quietly building. The most revealing moment did not happen inside Nancy's home, but it connected directly to it. Late one night, deputies were seen entering a relative's residence. No dramatic search. No forensic chaos. Just controlled presence. Hours inside. Then departure. Follow-up visits like this signal clarification. Cross-checking timelines. Verifying statements. Matching digital records to physical locations. It suggested investigators were aligning pieces. And then there were the ransom messages. Communication changes everything. Once digital demands cross jurisdictions, federal involvement deepens. But seasoned investigators know something critical about ransom narratives. Not all ransom demands originate from abduction. Sometimes they follow something else. Which brings us back to what the FBI quietly re-examined inside Nancy's home. The second visit centered on subtle alignment, not discovery of something new but confirmation of something overlooked. Placement. The position of objects that looked ordinary at first glance. Her phone charger was plugged in, but the cable had been recently repositioned. Slightly angled differently than photographs from earlier documentation suggested. Minor. Almost invisible. The thermostat showed a manual adjustment during a window when Nancy was believed to be asleep. Not drastic. Just a small change in temperature. And a door sensor log indicated that one exit point had opened briefly during the night. Not long enough to suggest someone leaving with luggage, but long enough to suggest controlled entry or exit. No forced entry. No broken locks. Which means either the door was unlocked, or someone had access. What truly unsettled agents wasn't a dramatic object hidden in a drawer. It was the synchronization. The digital silence. The environmental adjustments. The absence of panic. The absence of disruption. Everything pointed toward planning. Not chaos. When investigators revisited the house, they weren't hunting for blood. They were testing a theory, that Nancy's disappearance did not begin with violence inside that home. It may have begun with trust. The calm inside her home was no longer comforting. It was strategic. Every untouched item began to feel intentional. Every undisturbed surface began to look staged, not in theatrical exaggeration, but in careful restraint. The more silent the house appeared, the louder it became. And that is what shifted the case. The FBI didn't find a weapon. They didn't find a confession. They found alignment, digital, environmental, behavioral, that suggested the narrative of sudden chaos did not fit the evidence. Which means the most disturbing possibility is this. Nancy may not have experienced a moment of explosive fear. She may have stepped into something she believed was safe. When silence becomes too perfect, investigators listen harder. Because silence doesn't mean nothing happened. Sometimes it means everything happened quietly. And when federal agents stop talking, when updates fade and statements narrow, it usually means one thing. They are no longer asking what happened. They are confirming who knew it would. Nancy Guthrie's home didn't scream. It didn't look shattered. It didn't look tragic. It looked composed. And sometimes composure is the most chilling clue of all. If you followed this case from the beginning, you already know. The absence of noise can be the loudest revelation. The question now is not just where Nancy is. It's who moved through that house without ever causing alarm. Because whatever the FBI found inside wasn't dramatic. It was deliberate. And deliberate leaves fingerprints you can't always see, but you can trace. The house remains standing. The furniture remains in place. The silence remains heavy. But behind that silence, something changed. And once investigators recognize control in a situation that should have been chaotic, the direction of the case never stays the same again.